everyone, welcome back to Hearthstone Meta Hype. I'm Ecor100 with my friend Venga Dragon. It has been a month, and I want to know how not only Venga's doing, but how you guys are doing this time.
Yeah.
But how are you doing, Venga?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm just hanging out, and also just wanted to let everyone know that I have 45 packs that I'm giving away for when I get to 1,000 subscribers. That's a giveaway, so if you want to just make sure we do a second segment on this show over on my channel. So get on over there and sub, and I'm giving away 45 packs. So
I feel like for 1,000 subs, you should give away 1,000 packs. That's just me.
I did that. Yeah, that's what I had, but you know, we killed the budget. Anyway.
But anyway, I want to talk about nerfs. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for 4 weeks. And although everything is constantly changing, not only nerfs but buffs, by the way, just throwing that balance changes. But even though this is something that has been constantly evolving, ever since this expansion came out, it's been what I wanted to talk about on this show with you, and also like the state of Hearthstone as a whole. So I'm really excited for this episode, and I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts on the meta right now in terms of like what needs to be buffed, nerfed, or if you like it, dislike it, all that jazz?
It's like I have a love-hate relationship with Hearthstone right now. There's times where I'm like giggling and laughing because it's so much fun and you're putting pressure on it, and then there's a polarizing factor of that sometimes on my side it's just so unfun, because when you're playing against Mage specifically, it seems kind of unfun. But I think overall the meta is kind of, it is what it is. It's sort of fun. It's different than what I used to have. I'm trying to reinvent my enthusiasm for Hearthstone and try to figure out what's going on. So overall, meh.
Overall, meh. Okay, that is that's actually a great way to describe it. I've also been super mixed in my feelings recently with with Hearthstone right now, because part of me feels like it's super fun and I actually like the combos sometimes and I like trying out new things, and then other times I die on turn 7 to Warlock when I couldn't have done anything to stop it. But I'm just gonna go class by class and talk about whether or not I think they need a buff or a nerf, why, and then hear your quick thoughts about it. So the first one is going to be Paladin. I'm just gonna go in win rate according to Hearthstone Replay. And I don't think Paladin needs a big change. The only thing I would change about it would be probably the Banner, the Alliance Banner. I think that card, it is played in like, it's the second most played card within the Paladin class. Its win rate is about 56%. And it's just something that a lot of people have been upset about for a while because it gives a lot of stats. Honestly, I think that if you change the stats of this card to be a 3 mana, 1/2, so it's even less of a threat on the board, I feel like it would be okay. Or maybe change the effect to draw a minion, give other minions in your hand +1/+1, so that way it will not buff every single minion in your hand, just every minion except one, so it'll nerf it a little bit. What are your thoughts on Bannerman?
I think that this card here is the result of what I was talking about earlier, that this is the new Hearthstone. This card, if you compare it to what it used to be, you'd be like, 3 mana 2/2 with this effect that does all this buffing and all this stuff. Oh my goodness, this is not impossible. I think that this is a state of the new game and the way that it is. A 3 mana 2/2 with this effect is absolutely insane, but not in today's game. If you nerf this card, then you gotta nerf other ones as well. So I don't know. I think this card is in the state of where the game is right now. It won't be touched, and I think that this is the way that Hearthstone is. A 3 mana 2/2 is fair in this meta.
Yeah, I think that it is kind of, that's why I said the Paladin doesn't really need too big of a change in my opinion, actually. Especially with other buffs and nerfs that'll come out, I'm not entirely sure if it's needed. And another class that I don't know if nerfs are needed, but I want to talk about, is Shaman. I have a weird problem with Shaman. I don't think it needs that much of a change. The only thing I absolutely hate is how the first part of their quest is. Somehow changing that, because the amount of times that I've been perpetual flamed, have them overload like 6 mana crystals and then get rid of all of it all in one turn, while also getting like 2/2/3s out there with Feral Spirits after playing a Lightning Bloom. It's a lot. Like, that's the main power play, and you feel helpless after turn 3 a lot of the time if they really pop off. Also, the Canal Slogger is a 4 mana 6/4 rush with Lifesteal. A lot of people have a problem with this. I actually don't, considering the speed of the meta, but if other things are nerfed, this might need to be looked at in the future. Anyway, go.
The funny thing is that I think that the Command the Elements quest line it's absolutely broken in that aspect, because one of the things about Overload is the fact that Overload is supposed to be a sacrifice, and in this case the quest is counterintuitive to that sacrifice. The Overload cards now become the part of the quest line, which means that there's really no sacrifice for these, and I think that the quest in itself is just kind of bad. It makes sense for the class, but it's just kind of not the right thing to do.
So I'm just going to jump right to Druid. And I think that Druid is a little bit broken. I don't know if I like aggro Druid. I've played it a couple of times. Actually, I played it a bunch. It's what I got to Legend with, that and Shadow Priest, because I just wanted to like crank out games and get to Legend. And after playing it, I realized that this deck is really, really strong and has some pretty decent mana cheat, and it all revolves around the Razor Main Battle Guard. I think that this card, being potentially a 2-mana 2/2, or maybe make it a 3-mana card that reduces a taunt minion by 2, although that might be too much because the whole point is you want it to be aggressive. So maybe just reducing the stats on this a little bit to make it a little easier to kill would be nice. That's my biggest complaint about this deck. It's able to cheat so much value out of this one card. It's like the second most kept card in this deck. Its mulligan win rate is over 60%. And yeah, it's the only real card I have a problem with this deck, because it is what enables this deck to be so fast. So nerfing this deck a little bit would be nice in my opinion. Maybe just making it, like I said, a 2/2, or maybe even just a 1/3 so it can't trade into as much stuff and it itself isn't as aggressive. What are your thoughts on this card?
It's right there. The 2/3 is right there, that it could be pinged off and stomped out. I can see what you're saying about its effect and problematic, but when cards like the other ones we talked about, like Bannerman, which is in Paladin, exist, this card is far less broken than those.
I don't think that's true. I mean, like, think about it. That you coin this out turn 1, you play this, and then another 2/3 taunt turn 1, and you got 4/6 stats out there, and then you play another one for free, and then composting, which is gonna draw you 3 cards if your minions die, and it just snowballs really, really hard. Whereas the Bannerman, playing it on turn 3 does suck, but into any aggro matchup, you're just gonna get run down. Like, I think that Razor Main Battle Guard is ridiculously strong and doesn't get like hated as much.
I love it. I absolutely, it's one of my favorite cards in the game right now. So, but yeah, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
Yeah. Obviously, I don't think every single card here should be touched. Again, I'm just saying like the 1 or 2 cards in each class that if it were to be changed, these are the ones I would go for. And the next class is, I'm going to skip Hunter. I don't think Hunter really needs a change. I think it's actually pretty balanced right now. The damage output that it has is good enough to deal with a lot of the control decks, but it also isn't so overpowered that it beats other aggro decks anymore. Other things are able to just develop boards better and faster. So Hunter is very much the counter to non-interactive boards, because you have so much damage from hand. So it beats Warlock and Mage pretty easily, but it gets absolutely blasted by things like Paladin and Shaman. So I think it's actually in a really good spot right now. I don't want to talk about Hunter. But I'm going to move on to Priest because I don't want to talk about Hunter too much. I still think it's fairly well balanced. And the main card in Priest is not Control Priest. I will talk about a buff potentially for Priest, but it's Void Touched Attendant. It's a 1-mana 1/3. Both heroes take 1 extra damage from all sources. I think if it's a 1-mana 1/2, it would just be a lot easier to kill, especially if somebody plays like another 1-drop or something, because not many 1-drops have 3 attack. The best you can do is kill this with a 2-drop later on, or a 2-drop removal spell. And I think for an ability as powerful as this, it shouldn't have 3 HP. And that is basically it for Priest. Maybe Disciplinarian Gambling as well. Instead of summoning 4/4s, maybe summon 3/4s so it's a little less oppressive. Or maybe 4/3s so they're still as aggressive but a little bit easier to kill. And those are the 2 cards I'd like to target in Priest, because Disciplinarian Gambling is the second most expensive card in the deck, and yet it's still kept like the 3rd most of all of the cards, which just shows how broken it is, because that's how important it is to the deck.
when you're playing against Dark Priest, it's crazy. That deck is just so insane. It's so powerful,
Yeah,
and
you'll
just
die turn 5.
You just run people over because of that card. But there is always going to be one big glaring problem in the Priest, and I think even in Warlock, and that's Raised Dead.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to stay away from Raised Dead a little bit because it would hit 2 classes, but I was going to talk about that in Warlock a little bit as well.
Let me tell you, because here's the thing: even if you put down that card, you change it to a 1/2, 1/3, 1/1 with the same effect.
Yeah, you can still burst, play it as a surprise card from hand and get a lot of extra burst.
You know what I mean? So it's just, that's a hard card to nerf, really.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Raised Dead, but in the Warlock segment, because I think it's very problematic in that as well. So you're jumping ahead a little bit. Chill out. But yeah, I will talk about that in a second. Next is Demon Hunter. I think Demon Hunter is in a decent spot, actually. It's at a 4 to 6% win rate. The quest is decently strong and will definitely pop off sometimes with the Fell Brutes, but the Fell Brutes is its main power play, and unless they get it out turn 3 or 4, which does sometimes happen, it's salvageable for the opponent, but it's still powerful enough to be a legitimate win condition for Demon Hunter. I also think Death Rattle Demon Hunter is pretty strong right now as well, but not broken. I just like the state of Demon Hunter right now, and if everything else wasn't so ridiculous, I think it would be good. And Warrior's in a similar boat. It's
Warrior sucks right now, though.
I think that Warrior, all it needs is one more 1 or 2 drop pirate.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are going to be laughing at me, but I had a nightmare about Warrior. Real nightmare. I woke up, this is how much I think about Hearthstone. I'm like, oh my God, all they need. I'm literally, I woke out of bed, I go, if Pirate Warrior just, had a 1 drop, maybe that was a pirate that had some cool effect, and a 2, I was awakened by that. It's so crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, that's my main problem with Warrior. I feel like it's got a decent quest. It's infinite value, so it kind of fits it's kind of tankier Warrior style.
Yeah.
It just takes longer to finish than almost any other quest in the game.
What's funny is because we had this exact same conversation about Shaman. We said the exact same thing. We were it's just 1 or 2 cards away from being, playable and good, right?
Yeah. And then they gave him 1 or 2 cards, and it became the most powerful or second most powerful class in the game. So it's a slippery slope for sure.
Yeah,
it's a slippery slope.
So Raided Docs is the thing. It could be the thing. It's cool. The quest is cool. That one I like.
But yeah, I think maybe. Okay, I feel like Shaman got a couple of good things. Maybe just give Warrior one good thing, and it'll be strong. But also just in terms of control, I feel like it doesn't actually really have a really good win condition. Maybe bringing back something to help. And these changes would be something that would come with the mini expansion, adding a card or 2. Maybe some sort of really efficient, good armor gain that isn't just Rancor, deal 2 damage. That's honestly pretty weak in my opinion, especially considering most things are 2/3s nowadays. But just some other efficient armor gain. Because yes, they have a 3 mana gain 8 armor, which is a lot of armor for 3 mana, but it's not good enough. Most of the time I wouldn't want to play it unless I also have Shield Slam in my hand. So maybe some sort of extra efficient armor gain, maybe something that draws a card. Honestly, why did they get rid of Shield Block, man? Shield Block was such a great card. Gain 5 armor, draw a card for some cycle, was strong without being broken. Bring back Shield Block. That's all I gotta say.
Interesting. That's actually, it's possible as well, too. And I agree with you. The card, considering how the meta is now, the card is not too powerful for this meta, and they shouldn't have taken it out, considering what they plan to do. But next one.
And then the last one before we get to the 2 big ones is Rogue. And I don't know exactly what to do at Rogue, because I feel like Rogue is a slippery slope as well, where if you buff even just a couple of things, or even just one thing, it draws so many cards and can do so much so quickly that it'll be broken. And it actually already is still pretty strong in higher ranks from what I've seen, because one of its best decks is extremely hard to play, but if you learn how to play it well, which is Miracle Rogue, by the way, it can be absolutely devastating. Weapon Rogue is also very, very strong unless people are running weapon removal, which not a lot of people are doing. And with Weapon Rogue right now, including last season I went 7-3. This season I went 6-4 with it. It's not insane, but that's a pretty good stat line. I think that's 13-7 in total. So yeah, I would say that Rogue is in an okay spot, especially if other things get nerfed. I just think Rogue is a slippery slope.
Yeah, I think that the Find the Imposter quest is pretty cool.
And that brings me to the two big ones, Warlock and Mage. So I want to bring up Warlock real quick and just talk about how, because Mage is pretty straightforward, right? It's solitaire and does a ton of damage. Warlock has so many things. Like, it's got some of the best control in the game, while also being able to kill you faster than most other decks, has insanely cheap giant minions, like the Flesh Giants are still way too cheap, some of the best card draw in the game, has mana cheat. It's got literally every single problematic, like, mechanic in the game. And I feel like there are a lot of things that you could choose to change about this class, and this is coming from somebody who has loved Warlock for a long time. It used to be one of my favorite classes, and it's just broken right now to the point where I don't even want to play it. It feels dirty playing it, and problematic cards consist of Raise Dead. The fact that you deal damage to yourself is now actually helpful to you to finish your quest. So it's like, okay, gain 2 ridiculous minions and progress your quest. There's no downside to it. So maybe instead of making it deal damage, maybe just make it cost 1 or 2 mana and maybe deal a little bit less damage. So, because the damage in Shadow Priest doesn't matter either. So maybe make it 1 mana, deal 1 damage to your hero, and get the stuff back. So it's less mana cheat. It now costs a mana. It doesn't help Warlock or Priest anymore as much, and it's less oppressive. Next, you could talk about the... I'm just going to go through everything real quick. The Mithril Rod, because it's mana cheat as well. Maybe instead of doing it like, okay, reduce the cost of every card in your hand, make it like the Demon Hunter quest, where it'll reduce the cost of the cards like drawn that turn. Yeah, like in the wording, it could just be like, instead of reduce the cost of everything, just reduce the cost of every card drawn that turn. I think Flesh Giant could even be more mana. I've always said that it should probably be a 12 mana 8/8 taunt. Make it similar to a lot of the old giants that were like 12 mana, and give it taunt, so it's a more mid-range defensive option than something you play on turn 4 or 5 aggressively that you then give Wind Fury and kill the opponent with. And then the last thing, I guess, would be Touch of Nathrazim. I think that it should be heal 3 HP to your hero, because deal 2, heal 4 is just kind of ridiculous. Dude, Warlock has so many problems. The infinite damage from fatigue as well is so like, oh my gosh. But if you reduce the survivability and the early aggression of Mithril Rod and Flesh Giant, I think that would adjust it enough to where it should be fine, in my opinion. Yeah, well, I mean, anybody that played Warlock last season, not this one, before this expansion, would be looking at you like, Ecor, what are you talking about? The class has been crap for so long after we kind of, for 3 months, right? The last 3 months before this expansion, it was terrible. It was in such a dark place. Pretty bad. So they just went to the complete extreme. I completely agree with you about Touch of Nathrazim. I think the card is probably one of the highest win rate 1 mana cards in the game right now. So you could play it more than once in a turn. You can kind of plan out your turns and ping people out and do it. It's very disruptive and very playable, and it heals a lot. And I just think that it needs an adjustment. That card, I think, maybe an amount adjustment there. The weapon theoretically is supposed to be really super slow, but it isn't because of Raise Dead and everything that you could draw. You could just put Tour Guide in your hand, which everybody does in there, and you literally can reduce the cost of all your cards in your hand so quickly. That probably needs a mana buff. I mean, a mana increase nerf. So I don't know. It's just weird. There's so much that has to go on with Warlock, and it's just in a weird place. It's so powerful. It's just so powerful.
My
And
thoughts.
then the last one, sorry, I'm just jumping to the
No,
last
sorry.
one, is
that's
Mage, because we are,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think Mage, I feel like the best thing I could do to Mage, honestly, is just reduce the quest ability. Make it give +2 spell damage permanently. It will reduce the amount of burst damage so they can't kill you instantly. All of your burn damage is still going to be very effective, like Fireball 8 damage permanently now, along with Infinite Ignites is very strong. It'll just nerf Cram Session a little bit as well, so it'll make it so you can't like reload your hand as much. Or because the main problem I have with Mage, personally, not only the fact is that it's solitaire and it's really, really, really easy to finish your stupid quest, but is the amount of draw you have afterwards.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of also the quest reward, maybe instead of drawing a card, maybe it'll just be like deal 2 damage to a random enemy or something. So they don't get 2 extra, like an extra card draw and discover a spell. They'll just like, oh, you know, deal 2 damage to something, or freeze an enemy minion, or something along those lines. The point is, it's just got way too much card draw and resource generation. The amount of times it'll be like turn 8 or 9, and it'll be almost on fatigue, but obviously it won't because Ignite's infinite value, is insane. Like, it's similar to Warlock, and Warlock's entire thing is drawing cards. So at least it kind of makes sense for Warlock, and they burn their own cards. This class just runs you over and draws. Like, I don't play Mage that much, but somebody said I should try it out, and then I went, I think, 19-4 with it, and just steamrolled everything. And I only lost 4 games, and 3 of those games were to face hunters that obviously are like my #1 counter, and 1 Shadow Priest because they just burned me down quickly. But I beat everything else. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and
Yeah, the Mage is absolutely like crazy. I mean, it's pretty much for every single class except for Hunter and even, I believe, Priest. It's like in the 60% win rate. It's pretty crazy. I mean, the deck itself, there's no real solution to it. There's so many cards in it that work so well with each other that just nerfing one it's hard to do. I think a good start would be, like you said, though, is the quest has got to go to +2,
or
the way,
change their rewards to make them draw and generate less cards.
Yeah. And the Cram Session and stuff like that. So
or make Cram Session 3 mana, so it's harder to reload afterwards.
Yeah.
So that way it's not 2 mana. Like, that could also be good because the main problem is draw.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think reducing the spell damage will just also reduce the chance of you getting immediately bursted the next turn.
Yeah.
But that's it. Yeah, that's basically everything I would do. Well, not everything I would do, but if, like, a gun to my head, choose one thing about each class you would change, or I guess more in some cases, that's what I would do. Because I know everybody out there has a problem with at least some class. Like, no class is safe. There's always something to complain about, so I tried to address as much as I could here. That's it for me. There are a lot of things I wanted to talk about. It's been a month since we talked last. There's a lot of stuff that's been on my mind. And yeah, I just wanted to go over as much as I possibly could for all of these nerfs and buffs and stuff.
Sounds good, man. We'll see you over in my segment.